Sebastian Vettel is very close to making a sensational F1 return, and it seems like Mercedes has exactly what he needs in order to compete in the sport. However, the challenge of being competitive in the team that failed to build such a car in the past couple of years is a lot bigger than what he had in Red Bull and Ferrari. So with this in mind, is Vettel going to consider putting the suit back on? And more importantly, how keen are Mercedes to this idea? It's safe to say that Vettel is one of the most popular figures in Formula 1, and even though he retired from the sport, he hasn't kicked the opportunity away from making a return that will definitely shock the entire F1 world. David Coulthard has been the first to report about the comeback of the four-time world champion, stating, "Vettel, I met him at the Nürburgring last year when we drove a couple of the old Red Bulls, the V8. And he was so much of the conversation that he's not close to racing again. He still felt, in a way, there was unfinished business for him in Formula 1. But even if Vettel is considering returning to Formula 1, there will be harsh competition for the most wanted seat on the grid, which is the Mercedes 1. Obviously, Mercedes is going through a rough patch, and although they stated their intentions to be focused on securing the future with Kimi Antonelli likely to be the replacement of Hamilton, it's never too late to say no to such an experienced and talented driver as Vettel. However, Alonso is also in the big picture, and when talking about this matter, Wolff has already stated that he and Alonso's former team principal, Flavio Briatore, already had lunch and talked about this opportunity happening from the 2025 season onwards. But with Vettel being German and the roots of Mercedes also being from this country, one couldn't help but notice the similarity compared to Schumacher's move back in 2010, when he returned back from retirement to lead Mercedes into their new era. This is more or less what Vettel will have to do as well, especially if Mercedes finds it difficult to extract a lot of performance from the 2026 regulations. Regardless of that, the Brackley-based squad will have a lot on their minds in the following period, and according to former F1 driver Eddie Jordan, Vettel will definitely consider coming back out of retirement if he wants to have a short-term opportunity towards a 5th championship in his career. Adding to this matter, Jordan went on to say, "I have to say, in the short term, I would look at Vettel, because we know these cars are not as difficult to drive as in your day, in my day, when you needed a neck the size of a wine barrel. It's just ridiculous. The cars are not as difficult, and that's why you have the longevity. That's why you have Alonso being able to continue, and that's why you have the much older friends." But similar to what is the general belief of the sport, the roots of Mercedes will definitely play a huge role in this scenario happening in the first place. And elaborating on this matter even further, Jordan went on to add, "I think Vettel has to be in the frame because of the German contact. We know what happened with Michael before. He left Ferrari, and where did he go? Back to Mercedes, so that's a possibility. But if it was me and the way Formula 1 progressing, I would look at Vettel. I think it's a good choice. It makes sense for Mercedes, a German driver in the car." What does Wolff have to say about this matter? Obviously, the Austrian is approaching these conversations very carefully because there seems to be a lot of controversy around who will replace Hamilton. And the most important thing to remember is that the gap that Mercedes is filling is not one that can be filled easily. That's why signing a young driver like Kimi Antonelli, although it has some perks, does come with its own cons, such as having a driver who won't have as much experience to add to their lineup compared to Alonso or Vettel. But according to Toto, the German driver made the decision on his own, which is not to race anymore. As he elaborated, "I think Vettel made the decision to not race anymore. We're talking on a regular basis. We also talked yesterday, but it wasn't about driving for us in the future." Now, of course, one of the main reasons why Vettel retired was to be closer to the family, but he also mentioned multiple times that the joy of fighting for lower points, as well as the thrill of fighting for podiums and race wins, is nowhere near comparable, which has also contributed to his position when it comes to retiring. On the other hand, Mercedes will definitely give Vettel a car with which he can compete up front. The only question that the German driver needs to answer to himself and the F1 media is whether or not he wants to race again in the future. But if Vettel isn't the one making the move and filling the seat of Mercedes, then who can replace the 7-time world champion without leaving too big of a void? For starters, there is Fernando Alonso, a 2-time champion on his own, and one of Vettel and Hamilton's fiercest competitors back in the day. But the project he has with Aston Martin is not one that can be left easily, considering the fact that they're on the rise and the investments in the Silverstone-based squad definitely have the potential to pass Mercedes from the upper teams in the upcoming seasons. And this is something that Toto Wolff has spoken about, saying that the times in which Mercedes is currently in are definitely calling for some bold moves, with the loudest name being the one of Kimi Antonelli. The sensational Mercedes protégé has yet to complete a race in F2, let alone in F1, and saying that he has zero experience in the most competitive championship is definitely a fact that stands as it is. But while the hype could build up to his future in the sport being brighter, it also could unleash hell on the young Italian driver, because driving under pressure is not something that he wants to be doing at that age. Most of the drivers his age require testing in lower bracket teams. In this case, that would be Williams, and now that Mercedes might not have the opportunity to provide this seat for Kimi, they could either put him in the W16 or leave him for a couple of more years in F2, assuming he doesn't win it on its first try. If they make the former choice instead of the latter, Mercedes will yet again see themselves talking to Vettel when it comes to hiring a competitive driver who could provide some much needed feedback regarding where the team could be headed in the following years. Adding to this matter, Wolff was adamant that these times would require long and hard thinking about what is best for the future of Mercedes, with the priority being set on who would be the best teammate for Russell, adding, "Kimi's been with Mercedes since he was 11, he's been in the junior program, and his junior career was very successful. I think what's most important at this stage is that he concentrates on F2. If we start to spin his mind or unleash rumours in the media onto him, that's not going to help his F2 campaign. He's just stepped out of karts a few years ago, and he's not even 18. So I would rather not start any speculation about Kimi going into Formula 1 at this stage. But in 2024 and 2025 and beyond, the driver market is very interesting. We need to look out to the future. Who is it that we can partner with George? What's the best combination? I think in terms of the drivers that could hopefully join, there's a variety of options. At this stage, I wouldn't want to commit to this is when we're going to do it. I want to take my time. Well, this certainly spells bad news for Vettel, because if he is to join Mercedes and they emerge with the championship winning car, then it's safe to assume that he won't accept being the number 2 driver in the team, similar to what Alonso wouldn't accept either. This way, Vettel would know that the only thing he could achieve in his career were a couple more wins and podiums to finish off what seemed to be a very strong and fulfilled season for him. And even more importantly, help Mercedes navigate their way back into the glory days that they had from 2014 to 2020. With all this in mind, do you think that Vettel would be the best choice to replace Hamilton? And more importantly, do you think that Mercedes would think twice if the German services were somehow offered to them? Let us know in the comments down below.